Hi guys, and thank you everyone for joining this session today. My name is Aliaa El Shabrawy, and I am here to give you this very short session about multinational versus multilingual approach to SEO. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to take you through a 5 questions approach that I usually take with my clients to determine whether they want a multinational or a multilingual approach to their SEO. Speaking of my clients, I am the owner and director of Cleo Consulting Limited UK, and I specifically specialize in helping companies extend to the MENA region. I've had 11 years of experience across the MENA region, and now I'm currently based in London. And throughout those 11 years, I've done a lot of jobs, a lot of work in particularly bilingual copywriting and UX copywriting, content creation, UX management, and conversion rate optimizations. Some of my clients are Adobe, a fintech named Numo, 10 Lifestyle Group, and I also work with a lot of SMEs and SMBs, Samsara Music being one of them. And mostly all of them, the work revolves around expanding into the Middle East, strategizing how to cater to a Middle Eastern audience. Not always it's necessarily a multilingual approach. A lot of the times it's also a multinational approach, but I find joy in assisting clients into finding what they really, really need. So let's actually jump straight into it. Before we actually jump straight into it, I always like to start with giving some definitions. So we are, just to make sure that we are, we're standing on the same common ground, basically. So what is actually multinational and what is multilingual? Very simply put, multinational by definition is a company that offers goods or services in at least one country other than its home country. There are a couple of more, conditions to that, but that is technically what a multinational mean. And if you look closely to that, definition actually would apply perfectly to what we call the before the digital revolution. But if you think really closely about it, after the digital revolution, if you have a website and you have, audiences from 2 or 3 countries, by default, you are a multinational, just because you are catering, you are giving goods and services to more than one country. So that technically means you're a multinational. So really, after the digital revolution, if we are being super technical, any company now can be a multinational company if you are operating in more than one place, or actually one country. So that's what multinational mean. On the other hand, a multilingual is offering those goods and services in multi-language. I think this one is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of knowing when are you multinational and when do you need to go multilingual, especially in your content strategy and in your content approach. Now, it's very simple to start with a very obvious question. The first question would always be, do you have the international audience? Is it worth, actually, even if you are by default multinational, like we mentioned, is it actually worth expanding into another country or another language? The first question that you need to ask yourself, do you have international audience? And what best way to figure that out other than Google Analytics? And if you haven't set your website to Google Analytics, I think you're missing out a lot, because It's a free tool. Anyone can go and actually see the performance, because you need to measure the performance of your website. And it has a very nice breakdown of not only languages, but also locations. So you get to see and know who is visiting your website. Do you have international audience from other websites? Are they happy with the types of services you are currently offering? But also a very nice feature in Google Analytics is that it lets you know what kind of languages your users are setting their browsers to. So not only is it because English can mean English US, can mean English Great Britain. Spanish is one of those languages that are spoken in multiple countries as well as Arabic. So it also offers a nice breakdown of the languages that are set up for your users. So if you do happen to find international audience in your on your website, and you do happen to find a number of languages there, that is something worth for you to pursue the rest of your approach, which takes me to the second question that I usually ask my clients. Are you targeting the right country? Now, as we established, you could be talking English, but you have a couple of countries that are visiting your website. Now, say you are a UK company, but you have a lot of audience that are also from the US. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change the language, but at least you need to know, how are you catering to that audience? Are you really targeting the right countries or not? And a great tool to figure that out is actually Ahrefs. Some people call it Ahrefs, some people call it Ahrefs. Pretty much the same, you know what I'm talking about. But Ahrefs also provides a top country by volume. So you can go inside, look for a specific word or a specific keyword, and see how that word is performing in each and every specific country. It might be a case that you are localizing your content depending on the keywords. So there are, if you are, let's say, if you are a legal firm, for instance, the laws in the UK are so very different than the laws in the US. And in that case, in that specific instance, even if you are speaking English in both countries, you need to cater your audience or cater your content depending on the audience and depending on the subject and the sector you are trying to cater to. So it's not only a matter of finding the audience, it's also catering to that audience. Now, we've established that you have international audience. We've also established that you are targeting the right country. What comes next is, let's assume that you have a company in the UK and you want to start talking to another segment of your audience, which is in another country who speaks another language. A very important question that a lot of people do not take into consideration when they are looking to expand to another countries is what is the CMS that you are using at the moment. And for those of you who might not know, but CMS stands for Content Management System. And Content Management System is usually the place where you put all your content that goes out on your website. So you update all your content there, you make visual updates, several updates to your website on your content management system. And there are a couple. Of course, the most famous one is WordPress, but some people use Contentful, some people use, Drupal, there are a lot of CMSs there. But it's important to understand, if you are expanding or extending your content into a multilingual approach, it's important to understand and to know which CMS your site is actually created in, just for the simple fact that not all CMSs support all languages. For instance, Arabic is a very complicated, well, not complicated, but it has a lot of its notions, because simply it writes from right to left rather than left to right, and not all CMSs support that. So you need to understand what is your current CMS, and is it going to hold to the extension or the expansion that you are looking to do. The second thing you need also to consider is how much you and your customer like your existing site. If you were in a position to change or having to swap CMSs, is that something your audience are going to accept? Can you recreate your own site again in the new CMS? Are your customers going to be happy about it? There are a bunch of questions that you need to ask yourself in order not to in order not to lose your existing basically customer base when you are trying to acquire new ones. Another thing also to look at is how complicated your site is. Do you have like a one-pager that leads to different types of websites, or do you have a lot of pages that needs indexing? This is also very important, because are you looking to duplicate the website, the current website, or are you launching your new language in phases? Like, all of this has to be considered when you are creating your content. All of this also, if you are likely to add, you need to also consider if you are likely to add another language down the line. Maybe today you're thinking of expanding to English and Spanish, but maybe in 3 years' time, you're going to add Chinese, or you're going to add Arabic, or you're going to add Portuguese. So really what you try to do is minimize as much as possible the amount of content migration that you need to know, because everyone knows site migrations are a pain in the derriere, and you don't want to do it multiple times. If you really need to go through and do it for one language, might as well consider it for down the line, so you don't have to change your CMS and change your content and content strategy and content appearance so very often. Another thing to consider, which is a bit technical, but also needs to be put in mind, how do you want to index your website? Now, there are a number of ways that you can actually make it through catering to different audiences. Now, you can do it as a separate domain. So just like Google, for instance. So google.co.uk or google.us, google.eg, whatever it is, that is one way of doing it. There is another way of the subdomains, which is englishgbfacebook.com, or sometimes it's Spanish, ES, or DE, or whatever it is, the language, then the country. Or it could be subfolders like apple.com/CA, or adobe.com/UK, whatever it is. These are all valid approaches. To be 100% clear, I wouldn't be the one who advises on that. Probably your developers and your engineers are the best to advise you on that. But whatever approach you choose to take in that step, there are some things that I would highly recommend not doing, just because it's gonna hurt your SEO so bad. And that is one thing that you don't want to do, whatever your developers or your site engineers advice. Now, the first advice is try actually not try, 100% avoid having all the same languages on the same page. This is one of the worst SEO practices, just because of Google crawlers and any other crawlers. You would just drive them insane, and your pages wouldn't rank higher if you put both languages on the same page. So you need to separate your languages, even if the content is the same, but each one of them needs to be indexed separately so Google can identify each one of them and rank them differently. The second recommendation would be avoiding using cookies to control the language, but keeping identical URLs in each language. Now, some people use cookies to determine the language that the web browser is operating in. Now, that is, again, not best practice because of the same reason. At the end of the day, your HTML or your website, your address remains the same. Even if the cookies have identified different languages, your site indexing remains the same, which is, again, not best practice for your SEO content strategy. The last one I would advise is also using anything after the hashtag to control language. Pretty much the same. You've known it by now. This is bad practice for indexing, for ranking. It's just going to hurt your website so much in the eyes of Google, rather than make it rank higher and get it at least indexed by Google and its crawlers. So whatever approach you choose, whether it's separate domains or subdomains or subfolders, or whatever your site engineers recommend, as much as you can, actually, I wouldn't want to say a necessity, but it's vital. It's really, really important to avoid those three red flags that I highlighted. The last question, and now you've figured out that you've got your international audience, you've got your different countries, you've got your CMS, and you've got your, subdomains and domains figured out. What are you going to do with your actual content? Now, this has two approaches for your localization strategy. There are two approaches that I usually follow. The first one, which I don't recommend much, but sometimes we do it, you translate your existing content. You have to localize it, because translation alone is not enough. You have to translate and localize it. Just giving you that example of also the law firm that we mentioned earlier. There's no point of talking about, US laws in Spanish, because it doesn't apply. So not only you need to translate, you only need to localize. But the third step is also you need to optimize it with your high-ranking keywords in order to be found in the target country or the target audience that you are trying to reach. Now, again, this approach, sometimes I follow it, but most of the time I try to stay away from, just because it disregards the culture in so many ways. Now, think about, and I've had this several times happen, especially in a region like the Middle East. Even if you translate the content and localize it and then optimize it, how this content is going to lay out is actually pivotal to your target audience. Because the imagery, how it's laid out, the behavior of your audience can drastically change from one country to the next. So usually, if you disregard the culture, that will index your website, it will make you cater to a new audience, but it doesn't necessarily going to give you the results you're actually looking for. And sometimes that gives the wrong indication that, oh, we're not being very successful, in said country or said target region, while it's actually you are not catering to them the right way, rather than they are not accepting your product. So especially with the imagery and content is not just about a piece of content, which actually leads me to the second approach, which is the one I always try to go for, of course, depending on resources and everything else that the client has. But again, just like I said, content is not just a piece of content. And there was, I think, at the beginning of the 2000s, there was this huge saying. Everyone said it after Bill Gates: content is king. Now, I beg to differ with that now, because content alone is not king. You have to understand where that content falls into your strategy. So I would say, actually, just to update that, actually, context is king. It's important to know what kind of content are you creating in the funnel, and when is it going to reach your audience, at what stage. All of those touch points need to be taken into consideration, and you need to know when are you serving this content at which part of the funnel. Now, of course, you've heard about a marketing funnel, top of the funnel, awareness, whatever. There are a gazillion ways of how to approach people through a marketing funnel, whether it's, awareness, acquisition, consideration, or top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. I personally like this approach the most. Doesn't say that the rest are wrong. It depends on what are you trying to sell, basically. But it's important to know what kind of content, the type of content that you are producing, and when you are serving it to your client, just like I said. So if you look at this, if you are trying to get like top of the funnel, then it's best to work with blogs, social media updates, infographics. All of these things are great for awareness phases, because when people are searching with a certain intent, that's what they want to see, like the easy, very digestible, kind of information capsule piece of information. And then when you go more into the middle of the funnel, you're talking about templates, educational resources, quizzes, surveys, webinars, and events. That means people are actually have started considering and evaluating your proposition, whether it's a product or a service or whatever it is. And then you have the bottom of the funnel, when you start converting, you're starting to create loyalty, and you are starting to build and nurture that relationship with your prospects. So very important to know what type of content are you producing and when are you giving it to your client. Not only that, you need to have an integrated approach across your marketing mix. So it wouldn't be best practice, for instance, to put, I would imagine, a blog on your or any heavy text content on your email, because people will simply just ignore it or send it to their spam. So it's the visuals, the content that goes into it. You need to have an integrated approach to know all the touch points that your users or your prospects are going to interact with you, in order to make them do the action or arrive at the action you want. So your marketing mix can really vary between public relations, digital public relations, where you get, another partner's guest host for you, or link back to your site to make your content strategy stronger. You've got your SEM, which is your SEO, and if you are doing any PPC, you've got your emails to existing customers, which is a gold mine if you think about it, for all SMEs and SMBs. You've got your UX, which is how are you taking them through that journey, and of course your SEO, which is the core of what we are talking about. So very important to consider those two things to get that integrated, localized marketing strategy that helps you best serve your clients. Now, this was a very, very brief approach to SEO, when to figure to go for a multinational approach or a multilingual approach. My name is Aliaa El Shabrawy, and my company is called Cleo Consulting. Thank you very much for taking the time and staying with me to hear out this presentation. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And thank you, Natalie and Sapan, for hosting me today. And thank you, Outranking.io, for this summit and for choosing me as one of your speakers. I look forward to connecting with you all, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you have any questions or if there's anything I can help with. More than happy. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I hopefully see you soon.